What do I want to do? Glasses? No glasses? I look hot with glasses. What's up? Hello greeting friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Mel and today I bring you all the books that I read in the month of June, also known as my June wrap-up. I read a whopping, let me count them out, I don't even know. I read 22 books. Mind you, that also counts graphic novels and I did read quite a bit of them, so if it weren't for those I would have read less, but I always count my graphic novels and manga as part of my wrap-up. And we have a bunch of everything. We have literally erotica, we have romance, we have fantasy, graphic novels, we have contemporaries, thrillers. I am really excited to chat about all of these books today with you because I did find a few new favorites, and I am going to talk about what format I read them in, if I recommend the audiobook, if the audiobook is not necessarily good, and whatever graphic novels I read. If I read a bunch of a single series, like a bunch of volumes from a single series, I will just bind them up and tell you my experience with what I read as a compound, so as to not make this video extremely long because my wrap-ups are already pretty lengthy. I am also super happy to announce that I did finish my entire June TBR. For the very first time, I actually read every single book in my TBR. I am really proud because if you guys know me, I am first and foremost a mood reader, but last month I found a really great balance between mood reading and not mood reading, so as to, you know, follow the TBR, and I really liked it, and I'm gonna try it again in July. I am trying it out again in July. We'll see how that goes. But before I start talking about all of the books that I read in the month of June, I do want to give a massive shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Book of the Month. So if you guys are not familiar with Book of the Month, it is one of my favorite book services out there. I just love getting my blue box every single month. It is a super popular and fast growing online book service for readers, and their mission every month is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers find books that they love. And as you guys know, every single month there are literally hundreds of book releases that it's super hard to keep up with them. So for that reason, Book of the Month is extra cool because their team vets through hundreds of books every single month to give readers their curated selection of early and new release titles so that you can spend more time reading and less time researching. And also one of the most important things, or at least to me, is that it is also risk-free. You can skip literally any month, anytime, and you will not be charged for that month. And the best part, because you guys know a girl loves herself a good deal, I like spending less money on books. I like just feeling extra rewarded even though I'm spending money. So they do have the best price for new hardcover fiction, whereas on the bookstore it retails for around like $30 a piece. If it is your first month, you can get your first book for $9.99 using my code MELREADS. As always, I leave all of the info at the top of the description box. Let me show you this month's selection. For our historical fiction this month, we have Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson. Grace and Eliza are fire and ice, but when called to serve their country, they forge an unlikely bond and prove heroes. For our thriller this month, and I do have to say, one of my personal favorite selections from Book of the Month are the horrors and thrillers. This month we have Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, where two dads with a very particular set of skills attempt to solve the mystery of their sons' gruesome deaths. We have another historical fiction this month, and that is The People We Keep by Alison Larkin. Like the perfect summer mixtape, a coming-of-age story about hitting the open road and finding yourself along the way. This one I am super excited about. It's another thriller, and this is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. Shack up with your quarantine bae, they said. It will be totally awesome and not terrible, they said. And then for our contemporary fiction, we have We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lange. This big-hearted story of an Irish-American family is for anyone who's ever left home only to be drawn back again. So again, if you do want to sign up to Book of the Month, my link and code are down below. And yeah, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Let's get right into the books that I read in the month of June. So the first book that I ended up reading in the month of June was Crazy Stupid Bromance by Lyssa Kay Adams. This is the third book in the Romance Book Club series, and in this one we have a friends to lovers relationship between Alexis and Noah. This, however, was not as centric on the Romance Book Club side of it. I will say this is the least centered around the book club, but I still really enjoyed Alexis and Noah's relationship and their dynamic. I think Alexis, both being a victim and a survivor of sexual assault, she really needed somebody who understood her boundaries and somebody who really understood her emotionally and who knew where exactly they fit into the equation and when to step in and when to step out and how to kind of fit themselves into her life, because she is her own person. She is really independent. That's one thing that I really appreciate about this book, is that a lot of romances tend to grab miscommunication and make that its biggest conflict, pushes it towards like the very last bit of the book. Like some books, I read it in the last 20 pages and it's literally the dumbest thing ever. This book makes a good job at establishing it at like a halfway point of the book, I guess, where you can start seeing where those problems are going to develop, and they start happening slowly, but they are there and they are noticeable. And so for that, I will give this book credit, because I think even though I don't enjoy the miscommunication trope, I think it was done really well in this one. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it also had a lot of comedy with just Noah and the Bromance Book Club in the parts where we did have them all together. Just his banter was really great. Him and Mac are always at each other's throats, and it's just really enjoyable. So I personally really enjoyed the balance that this book had. Next up, we have My Girl, Katie Porno Plot Robert. Hello. I say that in the best way and the nicest way possible, because this book was a 5-star. Like, no shame in saying that. So for those of you who don't know, Katie Robert has a series called Wicked Villains, and these are essentially kind of like Disney retellings where the villain gets it with the hero. And so it is erotica. It has virtually, or at least this one has virtually no plot. It comes in at the very end. It's like sloppily done. I really didn't care for it, but everything else, the sexiness, the erotica part of it was really, really fantastic. I will say Katie Robert accomplished what she set out to do, and for that I really applaud her, because I was a little bit scared going into this. I was just going into this for the memes and the memes, okay? But it was a lot better than what I was expecting, because the premise of this book, like, you start, and I think right at the start it gives you, yeah, the content warnings, and it tells you that it's consensual, non-consensual sex. So when I see that, I instantly get scared, because the other instance that I have in reading that sort of storyline is Den of Vipers, and that book was just a no-go to me. In this one, I think it does a really great job at letting you know that even if it seems non-consensual, it totally is consensual, and that the character still has all of the agency in the world, even though she is in a position where she is very suppressed and she is being kind of controlled by Jafar. I really do think that this book was really well done in that regard, because I didn't find myself cringing a lot with those consensual non-consent scenes. I was like, I understand your line of thought, and I understand that even if you're vocally saying no, mentally you want every bit of it. Again, I appreciate this book for that, because it was a very just clear drawn line, and as a reader that makes my experience a little bit more enjoyable. More romance, The Bride Test by Helen Huang. This is one that I unfortunately didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would. I really loved the kiss quotient. I gave that 5 stars. I really did think that this was going to be perhaps even better than the first one. So in this one we follow Kai, who is one of the side characters from the first book, and in this one we have obviously a very reserved Kai. Kai is within the autistic spectrum, and his mom is constantly telling him, you need to get a partner, you need to just settle in and just be mature, basically. And she literally gets him a mail order bride from Vietnam, and she sets them up and basically tells them that they need to get together, and that's where the story goes. There is a lot of miscommunication in this book, and I don't particularly enjoy the way that it was brought up. I think because Esme in this book, who was our main love interest, there was a language barrier between her and Kai, and I didn't particularly enjoy the way that that was the sole reason for there being miscommunication and the sole reason for there being so much self-sabotage. I understand that. I totally do, as a person whose English is not her first language, completely understand it. However, I just didn't like that was the one and only reason, when there was so many things that could have been out in the open, so many ways that this could have been resolved. It just seemed a little bit of, let me put in conflict here for the sake of there being conflict. I didn't really love Esme as a protagonist. That sense of self-sabotage, I've read that in other books and I've really enjoyed it because I understand it. But in this one, it just felt, again, just for the sake of conflict, let me put this in here. I really loved. I think his journey was really beautiful in realizing that he is so much more than he thought he was. So honestly, I did see more progression with his character than I did see hers. I think her journey just didn't really come fully fleshed to me by the very end. Overall, I gave this 3 stars. It was like fine. I just didn't find myself wowed by it, but I also didn't hate it. We also have an interesting one, Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. Now, I really did think I was gonna love this. You guys know me. I loved Cemetery Boys. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I ended up giving this 2 stars. Now, this is a Peter Pan retelling, and in this one we have a Wendy who went missing some years in the past with her siblings on the woods, and she was the only one that came back unscathed. They never found her siblings, and they are still out on the search for them. And suddenly kids start disappearing again, and she starts being questioned as to why these kids are disappearing and how that may potentially be connected to her and her siblings' disappearance. And obviously in the midst of that, Peter Pan shows up and just, you know, causes some more mayhem. Don't know if I see enough about this book being original. In this one, I really did feel like the only thing that was different about it was the fact that the Darlings were not a part of the original Peter Pan story. Besides that, everything else about it was exactly the same from what I remember, because I honestly haven't read Peter Pan in the longest time. And I also felt like the characters' voices were incredibly young, and especially Wendy. She is 18, she works at a hospital, she wants to study medicine. She really came across as super whiny to me and just super immature. And even from Peter's end, I guess I kind of do understand it, because even though he is an immortal being and he has been alive for like over 300 years, he is still kind of like an adult trapped in a child's body while still not being necessarily mature. So I kind of do see that, and I will say that Peter was the saving grace of the book, but not in its entirety, because still Peter is supposed to be a very morally great character. He's not necessarily completely good, and that's the charm, I guess, of Peter Pan, is the fact that he is making some really questionable actions happen while still being kind of liked, I guess. And in this book, that was not at all what we got. We got a really romanticized version of Peter. The romance even in this book made me feel a little bit uncomfy in the way that it was executed. It really didn't make much sense to me. Nothing really happened in this book, if I'm being honest, up until the last like 80 pages maybe. And even then, I didn't find myself hooked enough for me to care. Even down to the plot twist, there was no foreshadowing, no nothing towards that being like the end all be all of the book. This one, unfortunately, as the kids would say, it does not hit. It does not hit. I also ended up reading Fence Volume 3 and 4, and you guys know that my love for Fence far surpasses anything in this world. These are some contemporary graphic novels that focus on fencing. We follow the illegitimate son of a really famous fencer as he makes his way through the industry, and how he really wants to make himself known for fencing as well, and to prove himself to his father and to his half-brother and just literally everybody who comes into his way, because people really do not believe in him because he has not received the fencing elite education. He has not been properly trained, but he will go to any ends necessary in order to prove himself. And these two, I think, were definitely my favorite volumes out of the whole series. It only has 4 volumes, but these ones definitely shine the brightest to me because the sportsmanship in these 2 volumes was so great. We got full-on matches in here. I'm talking like this person v this person and then this person. It was just so exciting to kind of see them fence in this format and kind of be rooting for your favorite character and seeing who was winning and who was losing and how they felt after they lost, and how they constantly, even if they're kind of like rivals, there is still a lot of respect for each other because they recognize how good of an athlete the other is. And it's just so nice to read about that. There are blossoming possible romance in store, and I am so excited because after these 2, we do have 2 novelizations, which is really freaking cool. So I can't wait to read those and see where this takes us, because honestly, the fencing series is really great. Both of these are 5 stars, like no questions asked. They're just great. Another 5-star for the Soul, Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. You guys, I cannot say enough great things about Nick and Charlie and Alice Oseman. So if you don't know what this is about, first of all, buy the first volume. Second of all, it's great. It is about Nick and Charlie, who are both high school students, and they meet each other. They're on the rugby team together, and they slowly start developing this friendship that blossoms into something more. And through the graphic novel series and the small novella, we just explore the relationship and face all of the hardships, dealing with reality and long distance, and coming out into the world as to who they truly are. A lot about sexuality and a lot about relationships and about just daily struggles in school, and it has a lot of talk obviously about eating disorders and depression and anxiety. Oh my god, it's just a beautiful graphic novel series. I highly recommend it if you haven't gotten into it. Volume 4, I think, faces an entirely different set of struggles for Charlie in particular. A lot about, again, eating disorders and anxiety and depression, and it was just so so beautifully handled, and I just love the conversation that Alice Oseman continuously establishes in these books and these graphic novels about even if you're struggling so hard and you're screaming for help and you're begging for it and you don't know what to do, even if you don't want to get better, there's nobody who can help you but yourself. It's something that you need to embrace and accept on your own, and it's a journey that you need to embark by yourself. And it's the same way on the opposite end of things. You can't really help somebody who doesn't want to be helped, and that is a very personal, self-reflective journey, and I just love every bit of it. And I even love how she brought up how you don't really know what's going on in people's personal lives. What you see on camera, what you see in school, what you see at work, what you see out in the world is not necessarily what is happening behind closed doors, and you need to be respectful for people, and you can't step boundaries. And I just really love and appreciate Alice Oseman for just reinforcing that message in this volume in particular. It was just a really beautiful freaking journey. Next up, I have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, a book that I gave 4 stars to. This one, however, is not a romance. It does have romantic elements to it. However, the book deals a lot with domestic abuse. So if you are thinking about going into this one, just know that this is not at all a romance. And I wish people would have warned me before going into this. So this is just my warning to you. If you've been eyeing this book, just know that it deals heavily with that issue. I am talking on page, graphically so. So in this one, we follow Lily, and she meets Ryle, who is a neurosurgeon, and he is a very ambitious man, and she is also a very ambitious young woman. She wants to be a businesswoman. She wants to open her own business, and they start developing this budding romance, except that Ryle is like very closed off, and he has continuously told her how he is not the falling in love type, he is not the relationship type of guy, and that he will not change despite what she wants to do or says. And so she is very conflicted emotionally, because as she is falling for him and just trying to make that relationship work, she is constantly thinking about the guy that she was romantically involved with when she was younger, whose name is Atlas. And the book was weird but good. I think the one thing that I didn't really love about this book were the letters that were addressed to Ellen DeGeneres. That did not age well. I personally found it really weird. That's how Colleen Hoover decided to write the flashback sessions. And I will say the beauty about this book is really seeing, I guess, the thought process or just the process in general, and really acknowledging that even if there's a strength to getting out of it, there is also a strength to staying and having hope that it will get better. It's a very tricky situation to navigate, and it's a very unfortunate situation to be in. Nobody deserves to go through that. And what really prompted me to give this 4 stars, because I don't think the book itself is a 4-star, was the author's note at the end that if you do read the book, I highly recommend you read it. The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson, which you guys, I freaking love this book. I loved this so much that I didn't even tab it. Like, I was just having a great time reading this. I was eating them pages up. This is part of the Truly Devious series, but this is a spin-off. So in this one, we follow Stevie after she solves the Ellingham case that we see in the main trilogy. And in this one, she gets contacted by the CEO, owner, camp director of this summer camp, where in the 70s, a series of serial murders happened and they were never solved. He invites her to come to the camp alongside her friends to see if they can somehow resolve this case once and for all. And it is very slashery. It really reminded me of I Know What You Did Last Summer meets like Jason Voorhees. Stevie goes in a completely different journey on this one because it seems, I guess, a lot more real than the Ellingham case. The Ellingham case, I guess, seemed so unattainable to me because it was so elite and it, you know, it had a lot of different elements going into it. But this one, there's just something about anybody could have done this. It just seemed a lot fresher because it had happened more recent than the Ellingham case. The way that there were so many parallels with I Know What You Did Last Summer was absolutely great. David was not present for most of the book, which I also really appreciate and enjoyed. I am just waiting for her to get with her soulmate, Nate. I know some people don't even want that to happen, but just the way that they interacted in this book further solidified why I love and want them together. I love the sense of camaraderie and help between her and her friends, and how they're continuously willing to put themselves on the line for Stevie when they really don't have to. And that's how you know that you have found friends for life, when they're willing to do all of this crazy stuff with you and they're willing to help you even though they know that they could potentially die, because these cases are dangerous and they're high profile. I loved everything about this book. The mystery, everything was just so intriguing to me. It was also really spooky. 5 out of 5 stars. My favorite out of the series so far. Maybe it's because I read it the most recently, but I'm gonna stand by my opinion. I'm gonna stand by it. Next up, I have A Dark Dark and Hollow Star by Ashley Shuttleworth, and I really enjoyed this book. I will say though, I can admit where the book had its faults, as I can also admit the things that the book did just amazingly well. This was a solid first installment in a series and also an incredible debut. I don't know if Ashley Shuttleworth used to write before this, but they did not come across as a debut author to me. They really came across as a seasoned author who knew what they wanted and who knew exactly where they wanted to take this book. In this one, we have a multi-POV story and we follow a Fury, we follow an Ironborn who is half human, half fae. Then we have a dutiful fae prince, and we also have the prince's guardian. We have a bunch of different dynamics within these. It was just so well done. The banter in this book, the dialogue in this book, it was just so funny and it elevated the story so much. I will say, and a lot of people just, I know they don't like the Vampire Diaries, but I really do think Nausicaa gives me Catherine Pierce vibes. I freaking love Nausicaa. She was definitely my favorite character in this. I really did think that she brought a level of like snarkiness and sass and false sense of bravado that I just really enjoyed reading in this book. Obviously, this book has a lot of trigger warnings. If you're interested in going into this, they are all at the start of the book, which I really appreciate. And they are anger, arson, blood and gore, body horror, death of a child, depression, disownment, divorce, drug use and addiction, grief, grieving, human trafficking, poverty, psychopathy, stalking, suicide, past and off page, suicidal ideation, toxic relationship and manipulation, trauma, PTSD, racism, violence, and gun violence. So this book really tackles a lot, but I really do think that what it did tackle, it did it with a lot of respect, and most of the things I really enjoyed how were executed. The one thing that I can't really remember if I ended up enjoying at the end or not, because the end just kind of like all blurred together for me because the book was dense. Even though it's not that long, it was very dense, was the psychopathy element of it, which I was really concerned as to how that was going to be portrayed in this book, that by the end there was just so much happening and so much overshadowing that element of the book that I don't know if I really liked it or not, because there was just so much happening. That is, I will say, the fault of this book, was that it was very complex. There was a lot of world building in this book. It felt info dumpy, and even with that, the elements that kind of dealt with psychopathy and all of these like little conflicts were being overshadowed by this bigger narrative. And this book also took a completely different direction at the end that seemed a little bit wacky, even though it did make sense to me. So I will say, even though I enjoyed the book, it was still a little bit all over the place for me at certain parts where I was trying to keep up with everything. It is a lot. I still did enjoy it though. I gave it 4 stars because I really do think that the audiobook of this really enhanced the experience for me, and the narrators really did a great job at keeping me in and keeping me surprised and engaged in the story. And you know what? For that, I really appreciate it. It did what it did, and it was a great debut novel. Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. This was a 4.5 for me. My first Mary H.K. Choi, in fact. I really enjoyed this, you guys. In this one, we follow Jane and June, who are sisters, and they are polar opposites of each other. They always have been. They used to be very close when they were together, and as they grew up, they grew estranged from each other once they moved countries from Korea to the US. And the one thing that sadly brings them together is the fact that Jane was diagnosed with cancer, and June might be the only person that could save her. That is the unfortunate circumstance that brings them together, and once it does, they embark on this really stunning journey of sisterhood and family and recognition and healing, and just, oh my god, it was a really emotional journey. This does have trigger warnings for body dysmorphia and eating disorders. It is very heavy in those themes, so just beware of those before you go into this. I went into this book knowing that, and I really didn't know how much it was going to hit me as I was reading and as I came out of it. I think June had a lot of suppressed emotions and a lot of suppressed, I guess, struggles that she was going through that she was not vocalizing, and it was eating her alive, really. The fact that she saw other people and continuously compared herself to them, it was just really emotional to see her going through that in a way that was so realistically done. And although this could potentially be triggering for people who read this book, because that's the reality, because it's very on page, it was very very therapeutic for me, at least, because Mary H.K. Choi writes this book from a place of understanding and catharsis. She mentions in the author's note how she wrote this book because she kind of wanted to process her own thoughts with these struggles and how she was dealing with them and how she would continue to deal with them. And it felt very therapeutic to me because it just felt like I was reading things that I had felt in the past or that I still to this day feel, and I just felt myself acknowledging them and just letting them go and saying, you no longer serve me because this is not the healthiest way to live. And it was a really nice experience to go on, even down to the familial dynamics that we had in this book. We have these two sisters who I know are in a constant kind of tug of war with, I want to get close to you but my emotions don't let me because we have this past and this is how I feel and my emotions are valid but so are yours. I know that June potentially for a lot of people could come off as super annoying and whiny, but I think that's the reality of these characters. They are realistic, they are three-dimensional. I don't think I have ever quite read characters like these, at least in contemporaries, where they come across as so real to me and they don't come across as like book characters, and I just was in awe. Just the audiobook for this was also beautiful. The next book that I read is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, and this is one that I don't have my copy of because one of my closest friends has it right now because she's reading it, and this was unfortunately a 2-star for me. In this one we follow Jane and August, and August in particular is a very methodical creature. She is very skeptical of love. She is very just to the point, to and from work, the same commute, the same train. I know my routine, this is what I'm sticking to, and because of that she ends up meeting Jane on the train, except that Jane really defies all laws of reality for August. She is actually misplaced from the past. She is from the 70s and they now have to go on this race through time in order to put her back where she belongs. And whenever I talk about this book, the best way that I can explain it is in the way that I put in my Goodreads review. I really didn't care for any of the side characters, which if you guys know me, I'm big on characters. Give me all of the great characteristics, give me all of the amazing banter, give me all of the amazing just side characters that add to the story. And I just didn't find myself caring for either of them. Completely forgot the name of the psychic guy, but psychic guy, I really didn't like that was his whole personality. It just seemed like he was kind of like a stereotype of the person who just loves tarot and who loves kind of like, oh, let me see your future, let me read your palm. And that was his whole personality really. Felt to me like it was put in the book because that is something that is, you know, very in right now and a lot of people are starting to get into it. And then his girlfriend Mila, I also didn't like. I feel like out of all of them, she was the funniest character, but also she was a little bit annoying to me a lot of the time. And then we stumble upon Jane and August, who their romance I really did like. I liked their dynamic with each other and they had some really cute, just romantic, heartfelt moments that I can't deny that they were great. I will say though, the romance did feel most of the times very one-sided with August. I felt like she was way more into Jane than Jane was into her, and it was honestly a little bit uncomfy for me to read that because it felt like August was continuously going out of her way to do things for Jane and Jane was just there. And beside that, it also felt like everything was conveniently going August's way, which I don't like. Plot convenient stories, they just are not for me. It rubbed me the wrong way, if I'm being honest, was the whole Jane's life and storyline being so connected to August, because the way that it came across to me was, there we go, once again, the white person is the POC's savior, and I really didn't enjoy that. And if you guys know me, you know that one of my biggest issues with Red, White, and Royal Blue, even if I did enjoy it, was the POC representation for the Latinx community in that one. I stumbled yet again onto this issue in One Last Stop. Even beyond all of those things, the chapters, why are they so long? Felt very disjointed to me. I just unfortunately didn't love this. You guys also know this was one of my most anticipated releases of the year. You guys, Muse of Nightmares. Muse of Nightmares. Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. Hello. First of all, the audiobook for this book. The audiobook. Get yourselves the freaking audiobook for this. Narrator just did such a fantastic job. I didn't want to stop reading. I wanted to annotate every page, but I also wanted to pay attention to what he was saying. The voices he put on for the characters, the anxiety, the action, the love, the yearning, the passion, all of it was there. All of it was conveyed through the audiobook, and I just loved every damn second of this, you guys. I cannot say enough good things about this audiobook, about this book. How do you even top up an already fantastic 5-star first installment. This is how you do it, people. Take note. 5 out of 5 stars. It's even more exciting. It's even more romantic. Conflict. There's even more world building on this one. So many explanations to things we had questions to. It was so fantastically done. I freaking love Laini Taylor now. Like, Laini Taylor, sis, I need a new book from you. Where is it? When are we getting a new book? Because her writing is immaculate. And I feel for every single character in this one, how everything connected to each other and came full circle. I don't even know how I could explain this book without spoilers, because I feel the words want to come out of my mouth, but based on how book 1 ended, I can't say all of it because it could potentially be a spoiler. We got another 5-star, and it's Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. I love this book. How do you step up an already amazing, incredible 5-star first installment? Muse of Nightmares is how you do it. Vicious Spirits is how you do it. I just cannot say enough good things about this book because I also loved this even more than Wicked Fox, and that was already a 5-star. Juno and Somin, come on, how do you not love these people? In this one, I love that I didn't even give you guys a synopsis for Strange and Muse. It's fine. We follow Juno, who is a dokkaebi, and that is a Korean goblin, and basically he has this line of thought about this girl, Somin, who is one of the side characters in book 1. She is Ji-hoon's best friend. Juno basically has this line of thought where he goes, could I ever be loved by Somin the way that I kind of yearn for her? So romantic right from the start. We still have more Wicked Fox in this book because the conflict is still in this book and doesn't get solved until the very end, and I love that because now Juno and Somin take part in it, and I just love these storylines connecting, but these two characters also falling in love while Mi-young and Yi-hoon are still going through the same thing. So good. The chemistry between Juno and Somin, you guys, oh my god. Which also reminds me, this is like a mix between like YA and like not YA, because Mi-young and Ji-hoon are teenagers, but then Somin, I think she's like 18, 19 from what I remember in the book, and then Juno is like 20 something. Kat Cho, hello. Once again, you know how to write tension, you know how to write chemistry. I love that I'm talking as if she was listening to me, but she just knows how to freaking write. The folklore in this one about the dokkaebi instead of the freaking gumiho, wow. Just wow. I want to read anything that Kat Cho puts out because I am in awe and in love with her writing, and in this one we have even more familial dynamics than we did on the last one, even down to Juno and his past, and still things about Ji-hoon's Halmyoni, and then we have also Mi-young's mother Jenna. There is just so much in this book about friendship and family and building relationships in a healthy way and acknowledging when they are not healthy. What more do I say about this book? It's a great time, okay? Just this, and where's Wicked Fox? It's right here. Read them, love them. They're both annotated to filth. I freaking love these books, okay? Please get on it, please. Okay, we're entering the last few books, and these are all readathon territory. These are all books that I read during my 48-hour readathon last month. The Midnight Secretary volumes 1 through 4. They were so entertaining. They remind me as if the possessiveness and indecisiveness of Christian Grey met the angstiness, vampireness of Edward Cullen, which is ironic, honestly, because these are both supposed to be the same person, because 50 Shades of Grey started as a Twilight fan fiction, and then throw in there a protagonist that is just willing to do anything and everything and to go above and beyond for her boss, which is said vampire. It's sexy, it's funny, also a very frustrating josei manga series. It is very much 5 steps forward, 20 steps back, so if that frustrates you, don't even think about going into this because it's gonna be a time for you. You're gonna be really mad at what happens in here. It also comes across as like the main character is like a ploy in all of this bigger plot. She's treated like an object a lot, but honestly in josei that is not very uncommon. I'm not really surprised that that is the case, even though it is frustrating. I gave the first and the second one 4 stars. I gave the third one 5 stars, and then the fourth one I gave 3 stars. Now I will say I am vibing with this. I am vibing with this because I like a good workplace romance. I like the sexiness of I am the secretary and I'm gonna, you know, fool around with the boss, the billionaire, the millionaire, you know, all of those scenarios that are like so unlikely to happen. I really like vampires. I find them sexy, so that is an added bonus to that. There are also very much sexy scenes in this manga series, which I also appreciate. I will say though, it's also really funny because I will never look at the word fragrant the same. She's like, boss, please bite me. My blood is so fragrant. And then he's like, your blood is the most fragrant out of all of them. I really am having a great time with them. Another book that I read during the readathon was Straight On Till Morning by KJ Sutton, and this was unfortunately a 2-star for me. Now, after reading 2 Peter Pan retellings last month, I think I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm maybe not as into Peter Pan as I thought I would be. I will say though, what I will give a lot of credit to KJ Sutton for is making Peter come across as he is. Morally gray, manipulative, just finding ways to work around things that benefit him in a way that he wants, and just not necessarily being good. That portrayal of Peter Pan I really enjoyed, but I just think I was going into this with the wrong set of expectations. I think I was expecting something more like Katie Robert books, where it's just literally porno plot. I thought I was getting into some Peter Pan erotica, and I honestly blame myself for that, because knowing what KJ Sutton has written in the past, which has been like dark fantasy romance, I am not surprised that the book had as much plot as it did. I just didn't know that's what I was signing up to, because I conditioned myself for just a sexy old time. And even the way that the book starts, it's like straight on action with Peter. We just get tossed in the middle of their day. Peter's already in Wendy's room and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go down on you. So I really didn't love the way that the book started, and I think it set it up for a failure for me at least. And there were just elements of it that I honestly really didn't care for. So, you know, it's just a very short review of I wish I would have known what I was getting myself into before I started this and conditioned myself to what I was gonna read, but that was unfortunately not the case. So didn't end up loving it, but I wouldn't put off people from reading this because it could potentially be, you know, enjoyable. I also read an arc this month of Nunca Se Olvida by Alejandra Algorta. This is a book that is coming out in both English and Spanish. In English is Never Forgotten, and I really enjoyed this book. At the beginning when I had read this book, I put it as no rating because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to rate this, and then I settled for a 4-star. I really enjoyed this book. The writing felt like a mixture of a stream of consciousness and then lyrical writing, which I'm not surprised that they go as hand in hand as they do in this installment, because it was really beautiful. It's about a young boy who lives in Bogota, Colombia, and the one thing that he loves doing is riding his bike places and just letting loose in the midst of cycling with his friends by himself. It's the one place where he truly feels free. And then one day, unfortunately, he forgets how to ride his bike, and he goes on this journey trying to figure out why he forgot it and if he'll ever get that memory back. It had a lot of societal commentary about life in Colombia, and the more that I think about it, the more beautiful it seems, and the more I kind of want to reread it, honestly, because I really felt for the main character and his pain, and he was so desperate to know why he had forgotten, and he was so desperate to kind of figure out why life worked the way that it did and why people lie the way that they do. I just don't know how to put into words how this book made me feel. There was a certain level of like franticness to it, and just so many beautiful moments. I read a quote of this as I was reading during the readathon, and I don't remember what page it was, but you can refer back to that vlog and just me talking about it, but it's really just a beautiful book. Starsight by Brandon Sanderson was also read in the month of June. You guys, I just don't know how to say read Skyward if you haven't. I freaking love the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson so much. This just makes me want to go deeper into his writing and just explore more of his work. I know a lot of people recommend starting with the Mistborn series with the Final Empire, so maybe that is worth checking out, because I really love the way that he wrote the characters in Skyward. They are so three-dimensional, and they are characters that are continuously put in a place where they need to grow as people, and that growth is not just put at a standstill once they reach, you know, kind of like the end of the first book. They are continuously on a journey of self-discovery and acknowledgement and just progression. It's really beautiful because I really do think it reflects the way that we as people behave and just evolve, and for that I am really appreciative, because sometimes when you read fantasy or sci-fi series, you feel like sometimes some characters either stick to their old ways or they kind of change and then they don't do any more growth throughout the series. And this is the perfect example of Spensa, the main character, is constantly put at work to change and just to continue to do the great next thing. And in this installment, we get a lot of our questions answered that we kind of left book one with. Existential questioning while still exploring this world that was so unknown to us in book one. Book one was a case of we only know the information that the people around us know, because that is the only anything that we, you know, have to lead us. And then in this scenario, because we're in a completely different setting with completely different characters while still Spencer being there, you get a new exposure to this world and a different point of view that makes me and characters and everybody who's reading this kind of question, is what you know inherently the truth or good? It's just really, it makes you think, honestly. Like, it's really, really good. And the world building in this one, the world expansion, was immaculately done. I wouldn't expect anything different, and I just absolutely love this and can't wait for the third book to come out later this year. It was 4 stars. And then the last book that I read last month was Beach Read by Emily Henry. I actually squeezed this in very last minute, managed to finish it by the point that the month was over. This was a 4.5 for me, you guys. I listened to the audiobook, highly recommend the audiobook for this. It was so freaking great. But in this one, we follow 2 struggling authors, January and Gus, who both write completely different genres. They find themselves in this like summer house retreat kind of vacation, and they are neighbors at that place. And while they're there, they realize that they have the biggest writer's block ever. So they decide to challenge each other and make a bet, switch genres, and see if writing different genres can potentially unlock something inside them and get past that writer's block. The premise itself sounds so freaking cool, and when you get into this book, you fall in love with the characters even more. I think what I really particularly loved about this book, beside the romance, because the romance was really fantastic, the theme in this book was also great. Hey, she got banged against the bookshelf, and I love that for her. I really loved the commentary about the publishing industry in this one, and you can tell that it comes from not only a place of experience, but also a place of just wanting to speak up against something that you know is happening in the industry that you reside in. And it was a very nuanced conversation about the differences between men and women in the publishing industry, and how the benefits are not the same, and how the perception from the public is not the same, and the critique is not the same. And I loved every second of it, because it's true. I have even gotten comments as a creator saying, why do women read all the same trashy books? Y'all don't have taste. It's the same thing as always. And I just loved the way that Emily Henry put that commentary in here. Even January and August, their chemistry, their connection, just the way that their stories came together, and they acknowledged their feelings, and they walked past all of the conflict and all of the struggles and all of just the obstacles. Everything was fantastic about this book. I really wish I would have read this and annotated it, but I was just so into the audiobook that I couldn't look past it. That's how good the audiobook was. Emily Henry knows how to write a good romance that isn't entirely a romance, but that still includes so many different things in there in a contemporary level. This one dealt a lot with grief and the loss of a parent. So if that is potentially triggering for you, just beware that that is a big part of this book. So it does contain struggles aside the romance part of it, because these 2 characters, just like people we meet on vacation, have a completely different set of struggles that they're going through right now that they need to move past before they even consider being together. And I just love that in books. I just love a realistic perception about love, because 2 broken people cannot be together in a healthy relationship. And so I really like the way that Emily Henry portrays all of those things and just makes it seem realistic, obviously with a dash of like the whole romance thing that sometimes is not as realistic, but I just personally really loved it. So yeah, you guys, those are all of the books that I read in the month of June. A lot to talk about, a lot of books were read. I don't know if that will happen ever again. I genuinely don't know how I did it. I don't know what I did. I don't know how I was eating them books up. Honestly, a lot of these felt like a lucid dream to me, but I'm glad that I could coherently get some thoughts out there, because that was a lot to run through. I've been filming for forever, so I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and comment down below if you've read any of these books. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And what books did you read in June? Did you find any particularly amazing books? Let me know all of that down below, because I'm always looking for the next great read. You guys know me. If you reached the end of the video, let's leave some beach emojis down below, whether that's the umbrella, whether that's some sea waves, whatever you want. Let's put some beach related emojis down below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for more bookish content. I am constantly uploading videos that I'm sure you don't want to miss, 2 to 3 times a week. And if you want more exclusive content, live streams, extra videos, early access to videos, a Discord server, book clubs, a buddy reads, a podcast, literally everything and anything in between, I do have a Patreon. We call ourselves the Citadel, and just like my social media, all of that is linked down below in case you do want to join us in any of that fun. Once more, thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out down on the link in the description box. Don't forget that you can use the code MELREADS to get your first book for $9.99. And hey, you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I love you, and I shall see you on the next one. Bye, guys.